first I want to ask you, how do you define the working class? And I ask that because that term, I've never really loved that term, the working class, because to me, I don't know if it really does, but it has like a bit of like a communist kind of like the workers. You know what I mean? So I never really loved that idea, but who are we talking about here?
Can I just tell you it's so interesting you say that, because of course many people who I define as working class in the book wouldn't call themselves working class until I started talking to them about why I was interviewing them, and they were like, oh yeah, I guess that does define me, because I think a lot of Americans like you rebel at the idea because it seems to suggest a kind of caste system. And of course, we like to think of America as being a meritocracy and having sort of sloughed off the class divides of Europe. But unfortunately, thanks to a lot of left-wing policies, we are approaching something like that. The argument I make in the book is that the class divide is really the defining feature of American life, and that politics today, right versus left, is a proxy for class. And so how I define working class in the book, and look, this is a clunky definition because it's hard to talk about this stuff, but I define it as somebody who works in a job that does not require a college degree, who's been locked out of the top 20%, right? So I'm not going to obviously we all know like truckers, and not truckers, but, electricians, plumbers, people in the skilled trades, contractors who are like doing really, really well. And I'm not talking about people who sort of made it rich, which is still possible for a small portion of people. I'm talking about people who work in jobs that do not require a college degree, although some of them have them, who are locked out of the top 20%. Now, some of them are living a stable middle-class life. They have the American dream. They are homeowners. They're going to be able to retire in dignity. But many, many of them work and work and work, and they are locked out of the American dream, the most basic elements of, a stable middle-class life. And unfortunately, both sides, pre-Trump, both parties had really contributed to the fact that the American dream is so out of reach for so many hardworking Americans.
Okay, it was a couple months ago. We spent a lot of time talking about the American dream and how we define that, even, and the troubles there. So what do you do? How do you do that? How do you define it, and how have the people you talk to defined it?
Right. So I asked everybody how they define it. I spoke to between 75 and 100 working class Americans across the country, and it wasn't a random sampling. I looked at the data of who these people are, so that each of the stories that you'll read about in second class represents a sort of larger group of Americans. The way they really define the American dream is home ownership is still huge. Having adequate health care is a really big deal. Being able to retire in dignity is a really big deal. And their children having at least as many choices as they do. That was sort of the basics. To be able to cover my bills without having to worry constantly, that was a really big deal for them. And I would say that's kind of how they would define the American dream, not having to worry that every bill is going to spell like total disaster for them.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. So one thing that came up as we were talking about the American dream months ago is that it was very money related, right? And materialistic. Maybe to put a negative connotation on that, but those are kind of the things you talked about that you listed there. I don't know. Was there anything American dream wise beyond money?
I gotta say, like when groceries are up 18% and you live on a shoestring budget, it's very hard to wax poetic about other things. I think that first of all, the thing that united everybody I spoke to who was working class as a kind of almost something they didn't even think about was the pride they take in work. They saw it as a kind of inheritance from their parents, and almost spiritual thing where they really, really, really loved going to work and the autonomy that came from it. They loved accomplishing with their hands or with their labor, but they felt that it wasn't fair that they worked so hard and could not achieve the kind of autonomy that hard work should be able to get them. And I think maybe that's what you're alluding to. That piece of it is already there. These things sound like monetary things, a home, a retirement and dignity, upward mobility for your kids, but they really are about autonomy. They're about the kind of the spiritual valence of being somebody who depends on themselves and can rely on themselves rather than anybody else. This is a huge value to working class Americans, whether they vote for Democrats or Republicans. And unfortunately, their hard work is no longer able to reliably secure them that kind of autonomy. And that should be an outrage to us in the elites who believe in this stuff, who believe in self-sufficiency. It should be an outrage that we rely on these people's labor, and yet they cannot be self-sufficient from working a 12-hour day.
That's really well said. We're talking with Batya Ungar-Sargon. The book comes out today, Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. I want to throw one more variable at you and then some more defining questions. We were talking about some World War II veterans the other day, and every World War II veteran I've ever talked to, they use some line like, I was poor, but never even knew it. Like we didn't even know. So they brought up like this idea of contentment. And I don't mean this to be like, oh, well, if you make $50,000 a year, you should be content with that. That's not my point here. But is there something different about maybe our modern era where, I don't know, like we're always wanting more in an unhealthy way, not in like an American way, which is like, I want my children's life to be better, but it can never be enough and I'll always be aggrieved. Is there anything there?
You know, when you have to call, let me put it like this. When you routinely work two jobs, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day, and you still have to call the electric company every month and beg forbearance so they don't turn off your electricity and create a payment plan. Like, I'm not these people are not, they're not asking for much. They're asking for the stuff that we take for granted. I mean, that's the thing that's so upsetting about this. Like, I didn't talk to people who were spending, $1,500 a month on car payments. I talked to people who were trying earnestly to raise children in dignity and working so hard to do it, working harder than you or I will ever have to, and yet simply could not secure the most basic things. I really did not find a kind of dissatisfaction. And the people who had a home and who, had a car and who had, were able to take a vacation once a year and whose children were in college, they didn't complain about anything. And even the people who were struggling didn't complain. They have so much patriotism and love for this country that in so many ways betrayed them with things like, trade deals like NAFTA. So to me, that kind of attitude is much more prevalent in the sort of college-educated set than it is in the hardworking working class.
Yeah, you brought up a great word, betrayal. So let's get to the title, How the American Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. How so? And did the people you talked to, were they able to pinpoint exactly what these things were?
100%. Working class people are so smart on economic policy. We in the elites, we don't think a lot. I mean, you and I probably think a lot about tariffs and trade deals, but most people who are sort of in that sort of top 20% that has sort of co-opted 50% of the GDP and much of the political power in this country, they're the consumers of things like migrant labor and trade deals that have made flat screen TVs cost $70, and so they don't think a lot about this stuff, but working class people think a lot about economic policy, immigration, which is of course economic policy, right? Although for the elites, they like to dress it up as some sort of like racial or moral issue, which is nonsense. They think a lot about trade, and they're really smart about the very basic, easy, nonpartisan things that would help improve their lives, things like vocational training, things like reshoring of manufacturing, getting rid of the diploma divide, not allowing employers to prioritize a college degree for a job that doesn't require any skills you would have picked up in college, housing, healthcare. They have really smart ideas. And so the first part of the book, Second Class, is about is the American working class. And then in the second part, I took the questions and the struggles and the things that they really, really struggled with, and I went to experts and asked them, what are some of the solutions out there? And I then took those solutions back to the working class people I'd interviewed and said, would this help you? Would that help you? Do you like this? Do you like that? And invariably, they came up with much better ideas than the experts and told me what they would like to see implemented. And, the headline here is really that whether you are a working class liberal or a working class conservative, whether you're a working class person who votes for Democrats or votes for Republicans, by and large, these people had very similar ideology and very similar policy preferences. There's a roadmap in the book for permanent rule for anybody who wants to take it.
Yeah. Where did you go around the country? And what cultural differences did you see between maybe someone who's working class in upstate New York versus Arizona?
So obviously in New York, I'm based here. I talked to a lot of people here. I went to Phoenix. I went to Denver. I went to California a bunch of times. I spoke to people in Seattle. I spent some time in Ohio, talked to people in West Virginia, Florida, Georgia. Really traveled around the country, trying to get a point of view of, who are these people? And obviously they're radically diverse. I would say culturally, I didn't find as much as I was expecting. And I'll just tell you about one, group of people that I met in Florida. So I interviewed, you'll meet in the book, Amy, who is a certified nurse's aide. She spends all day basically all night. She works the night shift, changing diapers of old people with dementia, really doing God's work. Amy's gay and she's married to a woman, and her wife voted for Trump because she really liked him. She liked his policy and she thought that he couldn't be bought. Amy voted for Biden, although she admitted to me again and again, Trump really put money in my pocket. Now, Amy and her wife live on a property that is on the home. It's on the property of Amy's wife's mother, who is an evangelical Christian. And when I walked into her home, I wear a very big Jewish Star of David. I'm an Orthodox Jew. She was so excited because she had waited her whole life for a Jew to walk into her home who she could proselytize to, which, of course, I was game for. I was in her home, and we had a wonderful conversation. And when I was leaving, she handed me her favorite Bible, and she said, I want to give you this as a gift. And when we got in the car, Amy said to me, I was worried this was going to happen. You don't have to take the Bible. And I said to her, are you kidding me? This Bible is so precious to me. You have here an evangelical Christian, one of the most religious people I've probably ever met in my life. And not only is she deeply, deeply religious, but she respects you. She wants her daughter to be happy. She doesn't approve of gay, whatever, but she loves and respects you and treats you with respect. And she wants you guys to be happy. This is America. This scene is America today. You have a lesbian working class woman who is a Trump supporter, her wife who admits that Trump was good for them, and the mother who is an evangelical Christian who loves and respects them. That's America today. That's the American working class.